Okay, with that, it is 12:01. I think we will get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hands-on Prompt Engineering to Improve Productivity and Efficiency using ChatGPT with Ross Smith. Ross is no stranger to this field with over 32 years of experience at Microsoft and currently in M365 supportability working on ChatGPT deployment. I'm excited for you all to listen and learn from him as our second Seattle Women in Tech Consortium event of 2024. My name is Emma Ryan, and I'm one of the leaders of the Seattle Women in Tech Consortium, which was built by a group of community focused volunteers who want to build and make real impact in the Seattle area and beyond. We strive to put Seattle on the map for a place for women in tech and collaborating with existing women in tech groups to help connect women and allies working in the industry for support, job opportunities, as well as building community. A huge shout out to our volunteers for their help organising and promoting this event, and to Ross for graciously volunteering his time and expertise. And thank you for being here. Since our inception, we have been interested in hearing from you, our community, and what is important to you as a women or ally in the technology field. I'll drop a link to a survey as well as the ability to join our community in the chat, where we would love you to join, as well as suggest future event topics or speakers. With that, I will hand it over to Ross, who can kick it off.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Thanks all the volunteers. Welcome everybody, or if you're watching the video afterwards, welcome. Thank you. And I'm just going to jump right into the hands-on part, right? So one of the things that I think is the best way to sort of learn how to use this technology is to just try it, just spend time doing it. So, I was thinking about this, is everybody going to have a machine? And, what do we do about that? And then I realized, well, yeah, it's an online talk. So of course, everyone's going to be on some kind of device. So I will, pretty much everything I talk to is product agnostic or model agnostic. So if you're using Google Gemini or Lambda or the public chat, the free ChatGPT from OpenAI, the paid version, Microsoft Copilot, I think everything that I talk about today will work in any one of those. So if you don't have any of this, and if you've never used any of these models before, you can go to the URL there, chat.openai.com. You can create an account or log in with Google. It's free. There is a paid version that's $20 a month, but you don't need that for any of this. Or if you have Copilot or anything else, you can use those. So I'd encourage you to try out a couple of things while we're doing it, and then you can kind of multitask. So I want to start with a story here. So back in the 1790s, the steam engine really started to develop, and they came up with the idea to start powering looms that made cloth. And so prior to the power loom, there was two main roles in making cloth. One was a spinner who spun the cotton into thread, and the other was the weaver who would weave it into cloth. And I feel like the power loom is a great metaphor for where we are with ChatGPT today. And what happened, the power loom came along, and basically the spinners were eradicated, right? There was no need for spinners anymore. And weavers were basically separated into two groups. There was weavers who could keep up with the pace of the machine, and those that could not. And those that could not obviously were out of work. Those that could keep up were treated like rock stars, right? They got company housing, free food, and stuff like that. So in the spirit of that, I just wanted to share the shirt I'm wearing today, that I want to count myself in that group. And so I think it's always interesting to look back at history, especially when we see new technology, what happened to society as a predictor for where we are today. Now, it's interesting because I do feel like with ChatGPT, so the power loom disrupted, spinning, weaving, cloth making, and in both negative and positive ways. Long term, it drove the cost of cloth down. And so people started wearing, have multiple outfits. They put cloth on the walls, all the things, because it was a lot cheaper. So new jobs were created. With ChatGPT, it's kind of impacting every industry, right? And so it'll be interesting to see what sort of new jobs will be created. So when we think about this, think about generative AI, which is the underlying AI model behind these things, as your really smart imaginary friend. And It's a great way. A lot of people will think of it as a search engine, and I'll go through a couple examples. It's much more than that. So if you were talking to your imaginary friend and you said productivity, they wouldn't really know what you want to do. But if you said, okay, tell me more, I have a slide on this. But if you're more explicit, you're going to get a much better result. So first, some of this may be remedial for people, so I'll go quickly through the beginner stuff. But what is a prompt? You've probably heard prompting, prompt engineering. It's basically the instruction or the question that you give the model. So there are 6 elements of a great prompt. These are not all required, right? And in fact, most prompts probably don't have all 6, don't need all 6. But again, there's the instruction. And this is where if you want to jump to the side and try some of these yourself if you haven't already. But tell me about this, or go do that, or create an outline for this. It's just an instruction you give for this is what I want you to do. And again, it's your imaginary friend, so you be fairly clear. The role is an identity that the AI can take that's going to produce a better answer. So an easy one here is, act like a French travel agent. Tell me about great hotels in Paris. Now, the interesting piece here is that depending on which model you're using, they're not all up to date, right? They weren't built yesterday or today, right? The free version of OpenAI goes through September 2021. I believe the paid version is up through, I think, April of 2023, and then some newer ones since then. So as you do these things, if you find the Parisian hotel that I wanted to go to is not in here, that's probably why. They call that model drift when the model gets out of date. Now, over time, that will catch up and things will get faster. But today, just be conscious of that. The next is the context, is give it some context to exactly what you want. This goes a little beyond the instruction, right? So instead of saying, what are video codecs? And you create an outline for a 20-minute tutorial to teach support engineers about video codecs, right? Be explicit there. The tone and style, right? Especially like if you're writing an email to your boss or to a customer, make it more professional, make it more empathetic, make it more inspiring. And so you can iterate, and I'll go through a little bit of this in a bit, but if you don't like the result you get, go back and just give it some guidance. I'll also mention here, why this is, I don't know, but the model responds to praise and criticism, right? So if you don't like an answer, say, that's not what I was looking for, or I think you're wrong. Or if you like it, say, hey, that's great. Can you also do this? And then formatting, create a result or write a table that I can paste into Excel, or go write this in Python, right? So you tell it exactly how you want it. And then finally, give it examples. So if you're trying to make a table a certain way or summarize an email in a certain style, give it an example of what you're looking for. And a good one here is give it some of your own writing and say, write me an email to my boss in the style of my voice. I'll touch on that in a bit. And feel free, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We have some time at the end. Use cases, or where can you use this? Text generation is the most common. If you've been playing along at home on the side, that's probably what you're seeing. It's also good at summarization and analysis. So summarize this email thread. And a point to mention there, depending on what model you're using, you want to be careful about whether it's proprietary company information, privacy data of your own, because some of the public models will use that as training data. So whatever you put in is going to be in future models. Now, there's also, if you use like Bing Enterprise Chat, some of the enterprise versions don't do that. They keep it inside your corporate firewall. And so just be careful, be conscious of where you're putting in information. So the next is translation. Obviously, language is a good one, but also for age, group, role, or discipline, right? So an example I use with educators is, for me, 10th grade, could not for the life of me understand what photosynthesis was. but I was not the kind of kid who's going to raise their hand and say, hey, can you explain this? I don't get it at all. If I had ChatGPT or some of these models, I could say, hey, can you explain photosynthesis to a third grader? Oh, I get it now, right? So think about, or, I want to target this role or this group. So if I'm a developer, explain this code to a program manager or a product manager or a non-technical customer. Coaching and advice is a good one as well. I have a coworker who always interrupts me in meetings. What should I do? Ask the model. It's great. I'll go through a little bit of brainstorming, but this is sort of for me, the most useful piece, right? Give me a metaphor for spam mail from ancient Rome, right? Just really random stuff, but just to kind of come up with new ideas. I'll go through, I have a couple of slides on this. And then image generation, soon to be video generation. Some really interesting, the space is moving very fast. OpenAI as of November had 100 million weekly active users. So all that training data is going in. So I think things are going to continue to increase in speed and accuracy. Excuse me. So what can you control through prompting? The length. So write an email to my boss that's 100 words. Or maybe I give it some of my own writing and say, can you extend this to 300 words? Or write 2 more pages on this. Tone control. So make it more empathetic, make it more inspiring, polite, be more direct. Style, as I mentioned, make a CSV, make a bullet point list. Audience, I mentioned, explain to a third grader, role and context, you're an expert scientist. Chain of thought is really interesting, and especially for math problems. So if you have kids that are trying to work through an algebra problem, just asking for the answer sometimes doesn't get the right. It's called a hallucination. But if you say, just put the words, let's think step by step, or can you share step by step? It will show you its thinking, and that improves the accuracy or allows you to see where it might have gone wrong. And then hallucination control, you can say, hey, don't make anything up. If you don't know, don't make anything up. Or can you add references or citations to the answers? So then you can go back and find the source document. For some of the models, there's they will shell out to get more current information. So like Bing will do this. I think Gemini does this. So you may get some links and citations to be able to validate. And so for this one, for those of you playing along at home, again, imagine you're talking to an imaginary friend. And so you say productivity, and go ahead and try that if you're in one of these models. And you'll see, okay, that's great. I see you want to learn about productivity. Can you tell me more? Right? Just as your imaginary friend would say. All right, now you can say, okay, how can I be more productive? All right, so now you get, a bulleted list of stuff. But then, and we'll paste this in the chat, but you are a productivity expert. Can you create a learning plan for me to be more productive over the next 2 weeks? I want to commit 1 hour a day to this. Please include a list of productivity hacks. And so again, for those who are doing this, go try, and you can see the difference. And again, it's much more than a search engine. And then here's some basic ideas for different ways in which different applications of prompting. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but things like, paste in a job description and say, okay, can you interview me? Can you give me interview questions for this job? Maybe I paste in my resume too and say, okay, can you give me 5 interview questions and wait for my answer? And then you go through and you can do the interview. It's a great way to practice. And as we go forward in this, when you start to have, voice and voice recognition, it can be a very effective job interview preparation tool. Teach me about a topic and put a quiz at the end. Put a 5-question multiple choice quiz. Write an outline for a white paper is one I use a lot. Help me to learn a new language. Create a meeting agenda with timings for the topics. right? And so these slides will be available. I have a link at the end, part of the Future World Alliance. The slides will be there. This recording will be up on our YouTube channel. So you can get at these, but and I have a couple of resources in the end with prompt libraries where you can kind of see and learn a lot more. Okay, so a little bit on brainstorming. I would say that the biggest point to make here, so you may or may not work on brainstorming product features. You might brainstorm security measures or writing topics, whatever it is. The majority of this slide came directly from ChatGPT. And so I used the paid OpenAI version because this is not work related. And just say, hey, can you give me 9 areas in which I can help in which ChatGPT can help me brainstorm new product features. And so then you'll see in the notes when I share this, there's the how to do this. Basically, it tells you how to prompt to get industry trends analysis or competitor analysis. And again, remember that not all these models are totally current, but you'll get a good part of the way there, even if you're using the one that was trained in September 21. You've really got 2 years, 2.5 years of work you have to do yourself on competitors, any new competitors since that time. But it'll give you a good jump start. Customer pain points, technology integration. The one I like is this cross-industry inspiration. So tell me, give me examples from non-tech companies that are good metaphors for spam detection. And so if I'm trying to build a spam detection feature, I'm thinking, okay, what is there things I can learn from another industry? So it might come back with, oh, the financial services has fraud detection, or retail supply chain has quality assurance steps. Medical has, or hospitals have medical checks, right? And so now I can see, oh yeah, I should really dive into fraud detection, see what they do that maybe my spam detection feature does not do. Sustainability, right? Tell me how I can make my feature more sustainable. Personalization and customization, scalability and market fit. And then brainstorming sessions is a great one because I can then come back and say, okay, I really like what's the fraud detection piece and customer pain points. So I'm going to take those 2 ideas and can you create a meeting agenda for me and my product manager, 3 or 4 customers, and our development team to sit around and brainstorm where we can take these features. Create a meeting agenda with timings for how long we want to spend on each topic. So then I can take it sort of to the next step. And sort of this bonus tip, and that this came directly from ChatGPT. I felt honored that it would decide to give me a bonus tip. But iterate. If you don't like what you see, ask for more details. Just come back and say, yeah, I like that fraud detection one. Can you give me 2 others beyond the retail and medical? And so, and that's true for everything, not just brainstorming. It is your imaginary friend, and they're not always going to be correct. They're not always going to have the best answer. So just give them a little more clues and ask for more. All right, so this is a little more advanced. This idea of sort of 0 shot, 1 shot, few or many shot, which is basically how many instructions or iterations, much data you give it. So you can kind of ignore the technical term there. But if I just say, okay, write a short email to my boss about the new project, I'm going to get some kind of email that probably I'll go in and add some details. But if I go, and this technique is one of my favorite, where you sort of do the curly bracket and give it a label. I chose background. You can make it any label you want. Put a colon, and then put your data in. And then at the end of your data, close the bracket, right? So in this case, I'm giving a background on what is the new project status, right? So it's going well, the team's motivated, worried about dependencies. Now I give it the instruction, write a short email to my boss, but consider this label. Consider the background I just gave you. So now it's gonna give a much more relevant answer and an email that's much more likely for me to actually send to my boss. And so you can kind of put anything in here. So what I do is I'll go, like if it's okay, I want it to write an email like me, right? So I'll go get 2 or 3 of my emails. I'll put them in. I usually go into Notepad, put them in Notepad so I get just unformatted and flat text, put brackets around. And you can use double brackets if you have brackets like this in your text, double brackets, just some sort of delimiter. Put it all in there, and then you can reference it in your instruction. And then again, come back and iterate. Hey, that's good, but make it more optimistic, right? And you can also put data. So if you go into a spreadsheet, copy a spreadsheet, put it in, paste it in, put it in brackets like this, and then say, can you analyze this data and give me insights? Great technique, very easy to do. And again, in the public models, your data is going in. And so if you have sales forecast for the company for next quarter, you probably don't want to use a public model. So least to many prompting. This is a really interesting one. It's kind of a little more structured version of the iteration piece. But what's great is now I have your Copilot, all these models, excuse me, retain the context of the conversation. Now, you can go in and create a new conversation and it loses it. But as long as you're in the same conversation, it remembers. And depending on which model you're using, it can be really going back to be 4K, 4,000 characters, let's say, up to 32K. And actually, I think some of the new ones are even up at 100K. And so it will keep. So you can kind of build on your instruction. And again, with iterating. So in this example, write an introduction I can use with my team to talk about the new project. Then I'm going to add a role. You're an expert in cloud services. Basically do the same thing, but here's your audience, right? And okay, next one is you're that, but you specialize in consumer mobile applications. And then write an introduction, a little more detail about the team or the audience. And then finally, all that plus, okay, make it 5 minutes long, basically. And then I'm going to introduce the idea of an app to experience. And because it knows, because it keeps context, for example, when I say in the last prompt there, mobile retail app, it knows that's my new project, right? So it knows that it's writing an intro to my even though I don't use the word project in the last prompt. So that's least to many prompting, and just really to highlight that it saves the context. So I talked a little bit about chain of thought prompting. And so again, for those who are doing the hands-on, try this one out. Come up with, you don't have to use this prompt, come up with a prompt of your own, write an outline for this or whatever, and just say, please think through this step by step. And just see the difference. If you want to do an A/B test, you can see how just adding that will give you a lot more detail. What's great about this, especially for brainstorming, like if I go back to the product features, and I say, okay, do a competitor analysis for airplane manufacturers. Please think this through step by step. And I start to get a list of steps that's going through, and I see, oh, wait a minute, I really like step 1 through 3, but step 4 seems to go a little bit off the rails for what I'm looking for. So you can go back and give it some more instructions, you can even say, I like steps 1 through 3, but on step 4, could you do this instead? Right. And so again, what I find is that, pretty much anything I ask for, it's like, okay, I could have thought of most of this. This is, my imaginary friend, did it much faster. And so the 10 things you gave me, probably 8 of them I would have thought of. 1 or 2 of them I don't think are relative, but there's one in there that, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. Right? And that's where I see it. I said before that really the combination of human plus machine is going to be better than either one for a while, for a long time, I think, because as a human, you can see, okay, yeah, that's something I wouldn't have thought of, right? Give me a metaphor for my spam detection from ancient Rome. Okay, that would take me a long time to come up with it, but here I can get it in 10 seconds, right? And say, well, I don't like that. How about ancient Greece? Right, and then I can use that for my product feature. So again, just to underscore, it's really important to sort of A/B test your prompting and iterate. Give it instructions, praise it, use punctuation. That matters, right? So if you're asking a question, put a question mark. But it's your imaginary friend. Just have a conversation and coax it to get what you want. Give it more instruction. So here's just an example. Again, you can do this on your own if you want, but I wanted to throw a few examples. So here's just an example of an A/B test, right? So how should I handle the deployment of this new training program? Comes up with some good stuff. Yep, that's probably stuff I would have thought of on my own, but okay, I'll take it. But now here's a more advanced prompt to say, okay, you're an expert planner. I have to deploy a new training program. I have these dependencies. People are worried. How should I handle deployment? You write a plan for me, think it through step by step. And now you can see, okay, week one, here's day one, day two, day three, like much more detail, week two going on. And that's going to be, again, it might not be perfect. I may have to come in and edit, or maybe I come back and iterate with some more guidance. But you can see the difference. I'll jump back here. And it's basically I'm doing the same thing, but I'm just in this second prompt, I'm asking for more, and you can see how much more rich the result is. Okay, so I'll close up here. Some of you have seen the OpenAI announcement about their GPT store. And so you can do this with your own data. And again, it's going into the public model, so you want to be careful what you put up there. But you can build your own. And this is particularly if you work in a technical area and you've gathered a bunch of go-to resources where, if I'm video codecs and I have a bunch of, maybe I have a bunch of code that is public that I look at, or different documents that either I've written or I have found that I find useful. I can come in, and this is the paid version of OpenAI GPT. And I can come in here and say explore GPTs. And then you'll see a bunch of featured ones from their store. But up here in the upper right, I can click on create. And then I come over here and basically I can either have a conversation to start building this, or I can jump in here and configure, give it a name, a description, what does it do? This is for your users. How does it start the conversation? And I can scroll down here a little bit and I can upload my files. So I can find a PDF or a spreadsheet or whatever I want, an article. And then I can give it some capabilities like web browsing or image generation. You can do more if you wanted to create custom actions to tie into functionality on a website, or something like that. But it's really straightforward, like 5-10 minutes max. And then you can either, if you're super confident, you can put it in the store, maybe make a great fortune from your model's wisdom. Or better yet, you can share it just a private link with friends. And I think your friends have to be in the paid version of ChatGPT as well to use it. I think that's going to change in the future. But that's a great way to play around and sort of stay current, understand more about not just prompting, but about how you can start to create models of your own. So with that, here's a bunch of resources. We have a book coming out in the summer, AI Revolution in Customer Service, and then a couple prompt indexes, Copilot Lab from Microsoft and the Prompt Index. Future World Alliance is a nonprofit that does responsible AI for kids. These slides will be up there under resources. And then a blog post we did a while back on a framework for building your own model, link there. And then there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out, friend me up on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to do this talk. If you have places where you think this could be helpful, I'm happy to do that. If you have questions or whatever, please reach out. So with that, I'll stop. I'll leave this up, but I can't see if there's any questions in the chat or if anyone wants to come off mute and has any questions.
Hi.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll ask a quick one. So I know that we were talking about some of the privacy components, and I think I missed the detail of like when you just showed me the ability to make your own model. I was so excited just now, but I was like, can I do that inside of Microsoft, like what we have inside our enterprise version, that I can drop things that's not going into the full model and private? Like I feel like I'm kind of confused on that and how much I can use this for my own work right now.
Yes. So for Microsoft, if you use either Copilot or Bing Chat Enterprise, I think it's called Bing Copilot now, those protect the internal data. If you do what I just did, I think the assumption is it's going to go into the public model, so you don't want to do that. If you want to build your own internal model, Azure OpenAI Studio is one place you could do that. But Bing and Copilot will let you upload files for a conversation. So if you want to have a conversation with, some documents you've created, you can do it that way, and that'll keep it inside the firewall.
And I know it's in the firewall. How, like, if I'm literally just opening it up on my browser, are we already protected by our enterprise stuff because we're doing this from our work machine, or how am I totally protected?
If you're in the browser, there's a Copilot up in the upper right. You'll see Bing.
Yep.
Again, Bing Copilot, I think it is now. That is protected.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ivy, I know you also had a question in chat. Would you like to ask it live?
Yeah, thank you, Ross, for the great presentation. Actually, I think before my question, we also had some others before me. Should we go by order, Emma?
Go for it, yeah.
All right. We quickly go through it. So we got Alicia asking, I'm curious about privacy and what you suggest we don't put into the bot, even though we wanted to adopt our tone/voice. It was kind of addressed with the earlier question from Jennifer. So Alicia, do you have any further questions that you would like to address, or?
No, I think I was going to say, I think that like how you answered Jennifer's question pretty much covered that. So thank you.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, then it comes to mind. So because I'm not a heavy user of ChatGPT, it's such a shame, but based off my limited interaction with ChatGPT, I feel like it always prefer to use some fancy words, and then those are kind of like ChatGPT labeled. So some people, they even figure like, hey, you use ChatGPT just based off those a few fancy words. So we had to update, after that, which also it was a little time consuming. So I wonder, I also tried some other, question iterations saying like, hey, could you give me a more casual tone or something like that? But it still like couldn't avoid those fancy words. Yeah. So I wonder is there any tricks that we can avoid this or train the model further?
Yeah. So again, I think you can give it a role or give it some specifics in your instructions. So can you write this, if it's a white paper introduction, can you write this for a kindergartner? Can you write this for a first grader? Can you write this using simple language? Can you write this using one syllable words, right? And again, the A/B testing and iteration is an important piece there. because when you find what works, for me, I find like third grader or seventh grader is usually really good. So can you explain video codecs to a third grader? Or if I'm a little more advanced, I can say a seventh grader, or 11th grader, or a university student if you want to go up higher, or as a scientist, or if you want to go bigger words, right? So again, just that A/B test iteration to find the audience that find a match with the audience that you're trying to reach.
Got it. Yeah, interesting, because I have been using like as a professional. Could you describe this in professional words? That's why maybe ChatGPT give me those fancy words. So interesting. Yeah, probably I should do some A/B testing. Thank you, Ross.
You bet.
Therese, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So speaking of that, I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of feed in a list of, let's say, words that I never want you to use. Like I never want to see utilize. I always want to see use. I'm going back to Strunk and White. Elements of style. Is there a way to feed in, something that says, a concise list of that kind of stuff?
Yes, I would use something like this, give it a label and say word equivalents or something. You could probably do this in Excel and then paste it in as data.
Yeah.
Right. And say, okay, column 1 is words I don't want you to use, and column 2 is words I want you to use instead, or synonyms. And just, keep that in Excel, and then every time you're doing it, just paste it in with a label like this. And then say, okay, in this case, write a short email to my boss, considering the synonyms. If I label this instead of background, I call it synonyms, and then I paste in my stuff. Say, write a short email to my boss considering the synonyms.
All right. But I have to do that each time I'm creating a new thing. Yeah, I can't have my stock set of instructions.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
In theory, if you built your own model the way I showed,
okay.
Without trying, I'd say with all of this, it's like it's moving so quickly, and things are improving and changing, that yes, I can say in 6 months you'll definitely be able to do that. I just don't know how. Right. But you probably could do that if you build your own model. And so one of your documents is your synonyms doc. Right.
I can also,
you could.
I was going to say,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I can also see this being used to help prevent grammar mistakes.
Yes.
People saying instead of saying between John and I, for it to know that should be between John and me.
Yep.
So there's a lot of applications. Yeah.
What we've seen in customer support is it's very useful for non-native speakers to write customer emails. So yes, I think that again, scan this. It's worth a shot to give it Strunk and White just the name and say, go apply this, see what happens. The models are trained on like everything, so that might be an interesting experiment.
I like it. Thank you.
You bet.
Archie?
Yes, thank you. So I had a question about when you build your own GPTs, and this kind of alludes to what you just spoke to. It sounds like you can create like universal rules, and I'm just wondering, like my mind was brainstorming. So like contextually, let's say I'm a restaurant owner, and I build my own GPT for people to look up maybe their favorite meals or recipes, but I can build the GPT to show preference to my own data set essentially first. And I'm assuming the GPT is still connected to the web, or would I enable that to say like, okay, if I don't have this, then show them best results?
Yes. So the model will let you do it. I don't know how much functionality is in the GPT that I showed yet, but there's a couple of things. You can scope it to say only use my data, don't use the web, or the broader training. And there's also this concept of a base prompt. So like if I have a role of act as a restaurant owner, I can put that in a base prompt and everyone gets that for free. Right. So,
Okay.
so that applies to everyone that comes in the chat. Now, again, I don't know. I know that's in the API. I don't know if it's available. I imagine it will be at some point if it's not already. But that would be a way you could do that. So you could, and you could change the base prompt to say, okay, we're featuring, spaghetti this Thursday, right? So that would be the first one returned, because you would sort of give it that base prompt.
Makes sense. And then as of right now, the model is only working, if I build my own, it's only working with other premium GPT owners, so I couldn't turn that public as a premium user.
That's one I don't know. You'd have to explore a little bit.
Got it. Okay.
But the capability is there in the model, so it will eventually. I'm sure it will eventually show up if it's not there already.
Right. An extra premium tier.
Yeah. There you go.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you.
Genevieve?
Yeah, so I'm sorry I missed a little bit of the front of the meeting, but I have started to use ChatGPT a lot for different proposal writing, where I take a lot. I mean, I write a lot of proposals, and I almost use it like a synthesizer, because there's parts of proposals that I want to blend together for different opportunities. And I did do an experiment where I spent a little bit of time sort of training it with my voice as a writer. Like, I gave it papers I've written and parts of papers just to see if that would be an effective way to, sort of having to retain the spirit of how I communicate. But my question is, let's say I was successful with that. If I did an A/B thing and one, I trained a little bit more and it was more representative of how I write versus something that was more generic. How do I preserve that work in training it? Do I make it its own ChatGPT where that's my main, because you can't save things. When I've done a really good session, then I'm like, oh, where is that session? And you look, you scroll down and you can't find it, or you're scrolling for hours.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you had thoughts about how to kind of evolve your practice with your collaboration, I guess might be a better way of characterizing it.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. I'd say there's a couple things I would experiment with. The paid version, I think, of OpenAI retains longer. But I would experiment with the build your own GPT.
Yep. Build my own. That's.
And then I would also experiment with, can you refine it as such that the act of quote unquote training it on your voice is either automated or very quick for you to do.
Yeah.
So like get all your, your examples into a text file and just copy paste, go. Right. So it's not a big effort each time. And also you can sort of refine if you get an answer that's not quite your voice, and that somewhere in the training that you gave it is an example that you would prefer it to use, say so, right? And then say, hey, how should I phrase this so you use this piece? And ask it how you should prompt, and then you can go change your text file so that next time you paste it in, you get the benefit of that learning.
Right. And then one other little attachment to that question is, I guess this idea of truncating your conversation with the GPT, where, you don't want to like throw everything in, like you're dumping everything into the blender all at once. I've had a little bit more success with almost, laying a foundation, say, I'm going to give you 3 documents that give you the voice or whatever, and then I will follow up with more. Like, is there a way to sort of weave an engagement with the GPT that bears better results than the big dump?
Yes. So there's a couple things. So it's sort of this, right, where it's retaining context. And then there's also what we've seen in the go back to the this.
Yeah.
The 60s framework touches on this a little bit. One of the things we've seen in building larger models is what we call commingling, where you have 2 documents that answer the same question slightly differently. The model will kind of blend them together and make up an answer. And so if you can be concise in the data you give it to train, so that there's not a lot of overlap, that might give you better results.
Okay, Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at time. I know there was a question in the chat from Julia, which was around training and running models locally, and Heather shared some great resources for Copilot Studio. If there is any last minute questions, I'm sure we can squeeze in one more. So feel free to raise your hand if anybody would like to ask the final question.
I'll also add for the person who said they missed the beginning, this is recorded, and if you register, you'll get a link to the recording. So it'll be up on our YouTube channel.
Jennifer, go ahead.
One other. Oh, sorry.
Oh, if that's somebody new, please let them ask. I was trying to not double down.
And I will say, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer questions offline too.
Okay, that's great.
My question was like, is there something or any type of certification in this that you would suggest getting or that exists? Just to show that, you know, we are somewhat well versed in, you know, the woes.
That's a great, that's a great question that I don't have a direct answer for. I'm sure there is. I know LinkedIn Learning has a bunch of great courses. You know, there's a lot of academic papers that are circling. YouTube is, I would say, is a hit and miss, but there are hits there. You know, some of these techniques. So if you were to say, okay, list 5 advanced prompting techniques, you know, just ask the model and then go to YouTube and look for videos on those, or go to like ResearchGate or academic sites, Google Scholar, Big Scholar, and search for academic papers. There's a lot. And again, it's moving so quick. I don't know of any. I think MIT has a certification program. And there's probably others on, you know, the education platforms, edX or Udera or Coursera probably have courses. I have taken a few of the LinkedIn ones, have been pretty good, especially they have an advanced prompting as well, but I don't know specifically about who's certifying or any sort of certification that would be representative of what you want. Maybe check out OpenAI. They might have some resources up there to explore.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and with that, we are over time. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Ross, for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. We really, really appreciate it. We will be sending out the recording to this session, so anybody who joined late or missed it, you will be able to get your hands on the recording. Do follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we post, and sign up for the community. That's also where we will email all the recordings and links to. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and looking forward to seeing you again at events soon.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.
Ivy. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.